and just talk about what that is like. So whether or not you end up doing one of those with us, I'm sure somewhere in your career you may have already been a part of one, or you'll probably do one in the future. So can everybody see my slide okay?
Yep.
Okay, great. And I feel like that question that Lucas asked was kind of a plant, because we are going to talk about where you can find really great images and videos of the Green Bank telescope that you are more than free and encouraged to use. So for those of you who've been around the Green Bank Observatory or other scientific facilities, many of these will have an education and public outreach team. So we are a part of the organization that's responsible for connecting the highly complex scientific astronomical work that you do with the public, and explaining it in ways or presenting it in ways that will connect to them and make sense. So part of the EPO team, or Education and Public Outreach team, is news. There's also art. So folks who are trained in graphic design and animation and ways to translate the data that you have in your FITS files or other data into something that will make sense for non-scientists and the general public. Folks who manage our public websites, so not the websites that you would access as science users to apply to participate in workshops like this or access data, but ones that the general public go to. Our social media platforms and visitor centers. So if you have a chance to go to Green Bank in person, we have a great science center there. We also have a visitor center at the Very Large Array in New Mexico. And then folks who lead STEAM education. So as I'm sure hopefully you all know, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math education. We have folks who do that virtually with students K through 12, college students, amateur astronomical societies all across the US and around the world. We also have folks with boots on the ground in Virginia, West Virginia, and New Mexico who go out to classrooms, and libraries, and community centers and festivals and spread the good word about NRAO and Green Bank. So what we do in a nutshell, EPO, the news team, public information, we help you share your story. So we turn your science into a story. So we break down all that data that you collect, the complex ideas, all the training and education you went through to get your PhD. We translate the jargon, the terms, the acronyms, all those things that you all use when you're writing your academic papers or processing your research into a story that the general public can understand. And then we have different avenues where we share that story with the press and the public. And we also give it some context. We explain why it matters in everyday life. So why do we take the time to share your story? For a lot of you on the call, it might be enough just to work with your peers, share instrument data, continue to grow and evolve your research, but there's some pretty valuable reasons why it's important to interpret what you do for the public. Primary reason is funding. You would understand that most of our major facilities, a lot of the projects that we work on, have a significant portion of government funding and support. And that's not just awards or ongoing cooperative agreements that we have that provide us with operating revenue. Sometimes it's support from elected officials to advocate for us when they're presenting to their colleagues or to the press. It can also help you individually. It can elevate your profile as a scientist or an astronomer and help move you along in your career, whether you're early career, mid-career, or late career. And it helps highlight our instruments and institutions. So it helps to raise the profile of NRAO and Green Bank, the profile of the GBT, the VLA, ALMA, all those good things. And besides helping to make those more well-known in the science community and the general public, it can also lead to new opportunities, new chances to partner with other instruments, multi-messenger astronomy, work with optical or UV or radar, and even business and industry for us to partner with aerospace. We have our fingers in a lot of different pies across the observatory, and something that we put out in the news can actually cause someone to give us a phone call and want to work with us. And in general, it's good for the greater good of humanity. You know, why did you decide to become an astronomer, looking up at space when you were a kid, looking at the stars and wondering where all this came from? So the scientific expertise that you're creating, the data that you're producing, we just help to get that information out there to folks who are not as close to it as you are. So again, I've mentioned some of the general audiences that my team works with you to get your messages out to. The general public, that could include visitors, could include folks like your family and your friends, your partners, the press, so journalists, content creators, filmmakers, broadcast news, news publications, at the state level, national level, international level. Education, so again, K through 12 audiences and higher education. Government, so all levels, county, state, national, elected officials, government offices, and partners. And that could be business, industry, even tourism. Just we work with a variety of different folks out there. So how are we sharing the story of your science? How are we actually distributing this to all those different audiences that we just mentioned? So one of the primary ways that you all might be familiar with and have heard of, and again, maybe even participated in, are press releases. So what a press release is it is a story often accompanied by photographs or illustrations or videos that we distribute to news outlets. And we'll really dig into that, and I'll show you a clearer picture of what that means. We also share information on social media platforms. We'll dive into those. I'll tell you what those are. Our public websites, as I mentioned, NRAO and Green Bank both have public-facing websites. Press and media relations, so folks like myself and other members of our team reaching out to journalists, getting to know them, having their cell phone numbers in our cell phones, sending them direct emails, pitching them different stories, and also special projects and events, so supporting workshops, open houses, at our facilities or out in the community, again, to spread the good word about our science and what we do. And over here on this slide, we can see some images and some headlines and little snippets from some different press releases that we have shared on our public websites. And here is what those public websites look like. So as I said, we have one for NRAO at large, and Green Bank Observatory also has its own. And right there at the top of the home pages is our live feed of the latest press releases that we publish. In general, I am always amazed by the stats. Right now, our team, our small but mighty team, there's just a couple of us, are producing 50 to 60 press releases a year. That breaks down to quite a few a month, along with other announcements, blog posts, and hundreds of social media posts, along with videos and a couple of live streams every now and then. So I'm sure you all have been to these before. And again, this is where the public goes. You all are also generally interacting with our behind the scenes science websites when you're applying to workshops like this, and also when you're accessing data and other training materials. So the social media platforms that we use, good old Facebook. Maybe some of you on the call are still on that. Surely your family members are, older family members. Still a really great one-stop shop to share a lot of information, whether it's promoting workshops and training opportunities like this, to funny and quirky or trendy posts, or recordings from our Jansky lecture that we had last week. There's just a lot of different content that we post. Social media is a great place for us to share a smaller story. So it could be that work that you're going to do with the Green Bank telescope, some findings that you have. Maybe you're not ready to publish, but there's still something cool that you'd like to share. We can work together to put together a post that we would put out on our social media platforms. Other platforms that we use are Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, Blue Sky, and while it still is around and kind of withering on the vine, Twitter/X. Couple of examples here that we had recently that we shared that were pretty well received. We were talking about our next generation very large array NGVLA telescope project out in New Mexico. And then this one really made me laugh. I don't know if y'all can see this on your screen, but a post, just a beautiful photo we have of the GBT that we posted on Facebook. Someone commented, we said, Green Bank sure is beautiful this time of year, and someone said, and still hasn't found any aliens. So maybe the research that you all do will actually help us to find technosignatures or extraterrestrial life. We'll see. So some of the resources that I'm going to point you towards are our NRAO and GBO brands. So that's so you can access great things like our logos that you will have seen on a lot of our presentations. You won't just have to Google it and download a low-res version, and that's all pixelated. You can download some high-quality ones. Templates for presentations like this, along with photos, illustrations, and videos. So content that we've created for other news stories in the past, or just a great stockpile of resources that we have for you to share. So we can find the Green Bank Observatory brand and logo guidelines on our Green Bank website page. On the NRAO website page, we can also find logos and brand guidelines. To get to that on the Green Bank website, you just toggle under Media, and you'll be able to get to brand and logo, so you'll be able to download those resources directly. There's some different file formats and treatments, horizontal and vertical, black, white, full color. And then when it comes to these NRAO brands, you can actually just put in the search bar or even Google NRAO logo, and it'll take you directly to this page where you get a lot more information. That question we had about great GBT images, we actually have a Flickr website for Green Bank. You can get to this by going to the footer of the public web page and clicking on these two little dots, which are the Flickr icon. And when you get in there, you can look at albums. We have one called Best of Green Bank Observatory with, I think, like maybe 50 photos in there. Green Bank Telescope has hundreds of photos of the GBT. There's GBO and GBT B-roll. B-roll is a kind of an industry term that is used for just general footage you see of a site. So there's flyovers of the GBT and of the whole campus, and video of people getting tours on the GBT, all sorts of good stuff in there. So you are free to access and use any of these materials. You may see credit information noted when you go to download the asset or the resource. So just note that in your presentation and you're good to go, you're good to share. Because of how our funding works, we operate under the Creative Commons license, number 4.0. So that means that as a nonprofit educational use, you can use any of the images and videos we have without permission, just by noting the credit information you'll see affiliated with them. Here's a couple of examples of what press releases, so again, one of the primary products that we create, look like. So one that's posted on our NRAO public website, one that's been picked up by science outlet, phys.org. We get picked up regularly by everything from the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal to the usual suspects out there in the scientific world, whether we've been published in a journal or whether we have another new finding that or project news that we're sharing. So how do we go through the process of creating and sharing a press release? Well, we have a handy dandy form that we use to collect all the information that you might have about your story. And again, this could be about specific scientific research that you've done and a paper that you're working on that's about to be published in a journal, or it could be a story about you as an individual, as a researcher, your team, your university or facility that you work for. We can accept news pitches or news stories about a variety of different things, but we ask everybody to fill out this same form. And this form goes through a series of questions, really basic information that's absolutely necessary when we're putting something together to share with the press. So simple things like your full name, your title, institution that you're affiliated with. We ask you to think about your scientific research from a different perspective. We ask you to summarize it as an elevator pitch. So think of the way that you would tell a non-scientist about your work and how is it important for everyday life. And to be honest with you, when people complete this form, some complete it better than others. Some have a really creative take. Their head kind of automatically goes to that angle or that space. Other people, it may be harder for you to separate yourself from that strictly science perspective, and that's okay. You can enter something that's a bit more technical, and then it's my job and my team's job to help you translate that for the public. So there's a series of 7 or 8 questions. We even ask you to think about what your science finding could look like. So sometimes you might have a really clear idea, sometimes you might not. You can make notes on that, you can upload a sketch. After you submit this information, we process it. We take a look at the form, and I'll show you some slides that'll walk you through that process even in more detail. So the place that you find this form, you should be able to email your project friend, and they would send you my contact information, and I would send you this link. Or if you go to the NRAO public homepage under News and click on Media Resources, you can get a link to that form directly. So after that, as I said, we process your request, we go through your form, we analyze it, and we look at a few factors. Obviously, does your science tell a good story? Is there a good hook or a catchline, a catchphrase? And what I mean by that, have you discovered something that's the biggest, the fastest, the smallest, the slowest? Is it unusual in some sort of way? Because that is definitely a hook that is going to grab journalists' attention. We also check our schedule. So again, I said we have a small team. Right now, there are just 2 of us who are writing and producing press releases. This is a quick snapshot I pulled from a spreadsheet that we use to manage. So far, for the month of October, we've actually distributed 10 press releases, and we have, it looks like, another 10 or 12 on deck for this quarter, which runs through the end of December. And I do know that we have to add another 2 or 3. So, thank you for your, I know, that's a lot. We do a lot of work. And we don't just do press releases. We produce a lot of other communications resources for NRAO and Green Bank at large. So you're in competition with a lot of other folks, not just folks who use the GBT, but folks who use ALMA, the VLA, and the VLBA. So I'll give you a pro tip. Something that will really catch my eye or our other press officers' eye is if you happen to team up and use data from multiple NRAO instruments. A lot of times there's overlap between the GMT and the VLA. The GBT might be part of the GMVA. So that really kind of ups your ante if it's a 2-for or even a 3-for-1 when it comes to a press release. So we check our schedule, we see if the story is good, if it's going to fit, and part of it fitting is knowing if you're going to publish this in a journal, when is that article going to publish? The more lead time you can give us, the better. You should actually, if you think you want to do a press release, be in touch with me or our team as soon as you are drafting that article, as soon as you are submitting it to the journal, because that should give us, at a minimum, at least 6 to 8 weeks of lead time to work with. Sometimes we may have 3 or 4 months before your article is going to be published, and that is even better because that means that we can draft the press release, we can iterate on it, we can produce artwork, we can have everything locked down and ready to go before your article publishes. Because what we actually do is we align the publication of the journal article with the distribution of the press release. So all that information, all that news is really fresh and hitting the press for the first time. And we definitely draft the release together. I or my colleague will generally write a draft of the text, and then we send it to you for review and feedback. We use Google Docs to write and stage this text, And this is a real fresh one that I just pulled from last month. I was working with Adam Dong, who is a fellow with NRAO in Green Bank right now, based in Green Bank. And you can see us iterating, going back and forth in the comments as he was critiquing and clarifying and adding to the text that I had drafted based on the paper he had written. And guess what happens? Sometimes as a non-scientist who's writing this story, we might take a different angle than you had in mind. You might need to help us course correct to actually focus on the findings, the results that you have in your paper. And then we'll work together to really tease out and draw out that story that we think is going to catch journalists' attention. So we iterate on it. That can take a few weeks. We also work with, if you are from a higher education institution or another facility, we talk with and communicate with your communications staff or press staff based there, because oftentimes they may want to co-release the press release. They may want to take what we write and do their own version, highlighting your home institution. All that is totally fine and good, and we're happy to work with each other. But that just means more hands in that pie and more communication that needs to happen. And so that's why if we're working on something together, it's really important for us to communicate regularly on Zoom calls, Teams calls, or over email. Once we do reach a final draft of the press release, we send it off to the U.S. National Science Foundation for review. As one of the NRAO and Green Bank's major funders, they always have to check the box and make sure that they think that they've been represented well, they know this news is coming, and then after we get their approval, we get ready to publish. Again, aligning with when your journal article is going to publish. And oftentimes, we'll be in touch with the journal editors directly so we can make sure we have everything synced. Certain journals have specific rules about when things can or can't be shared. And the way that we share our information is not just publishing it on our website, we distribute it to the National Newswire Service, which is a subscription service that journalists across the country are a part of, and we often give them a sneak peek, a heads up under embargo that the press release is coming. And some journals actually don't approve of that. So we have a list of those. We know how to jump through all the hoops and make sure we don't break any rules. So we're here to answer questions to you about that as we go through the process. So again, we publish your press release when your journal article publishes, goes up on the NRAO website, the Green Bank website, National Newswire. I also have a journalist contact list that I built over the years that I think has close to 200 folks on it right now. So journalists we've worked with in the past or who've told our stories, we have their direct emails and they get that sent to them directly, along with elected officials, government officials, NSF, other organizations that we work with. So we're all on the same page. And then we'll also take that press release and feature it on our social media. So that artwork, that headline gets amplified even more. I've pulled a couple of little graphs from some dashboards that we work with. We'll take a look at one of them in a little bit more detail. This is actually pulled from the National Newswire. So this is how some of our press releases that I distributed last month, this month and last month have performed. So it's always fun for me to see which ones get the most hits. That means that 4,870 journalists clicked on the story, neighboring stars, warped ring shaped by, I can't remember what it was shaped by. I think it was, I don't know, some sort of magnetic field. And I'm pretty sure that that was an ALMA result. So sometimes, again, a catchy headline, wordplay, something quirky will be what gets reporters to click on a headline and then to cover that story. So besides just sending this information out, what can happen next after working together, sharing a story, sharing a press release? Sometimes we get contacted for an interview. Don't worry, somebody isn't necessarily going to come want to shove a camera in your face. Oftentimes nowadays these are done virtually, and a lot of times the press coverage that we get is on websites, digital content, printed content. So a lot of it's just done via Zoom. A lot of recordings are just to take down the interview and transcriptions, and you don't really have to worry about being on camera. But every now and then, broadcast news might want to come and cover something. And every now and then, we may even collaborate on a much bigger outlet like a press conference. Usually this is only for press releases that go out around bigger national astronomical conferences that we're a part of, like AAS or AAAS. And that's what's happening here with one of our scientists, Patrick Taylor, who's talking about radar, who was part of a conference panel a couple of years ago at AAS. Actually, our team right now is in the thick of preparing for the January AAS conference. The AAS press office sent me a list of 1,800 abstracts to preview. I keyword searched those for NRAO, Green Bank, GBT, all our instruments, pulled out about 180 abstracts. And from there, my colleague and I whittled them down to a dozen that we are recommending for press conferences. That doesn't mean that we're all going to get them. It's AAS's call who they want to include. A dozen is the most that we've ever participated in, so we'll see what happens. We should get that news back here in about 2 weeks before Thanksgiving, which just gives us a couple of weeks to prepare before AAS happens that first week in January. So, wow, that was it in a nutshell. If you need anything, I'm here for you. That's me. I'm Jill. Take down my email. I'm happy to give you any communications, advice, or support you might have, help you share news about your project. Again, whether it's something as you're working on your research, preparing to publish, or after you publish, if you want to go all in and do a press release, I can also point you towards all our NRAO and GBO resources. And this other awesome person in the photo with me is Karina, who is the other public information officer out in New Mexico and takes care of all our instruments out west. So yeah, please let me know any questions that you have. We'll have these slides if you find them useful. I'll stop sharing, and yeah, let me know what you might want to know more about.
Thanks so much, Jill. What questions do we have? I'll just say I use that Flickr website all the time, a couple times a week. I'll go in there and pull great GBT photos off for talks, anything like that.
I'll actually drop that link in the chat since everybody is signed on. That way you have it more handy. And it's okay not to have questions. A lot of times somebody might take down my email and then email me like randomly 3 months from now and be like, hey, I saw you present and now I want to know about XYZ. And super happy to help anytime. So
we have Joe raising his hand.
Too, I see a couple of familiar names in the training. So hey, folks. I think at least one person has been a part of press releases in the past.
Joe, would you like to unmute and ask a question?
Sure, yeah. So this is kind of a very specific question more than a general question. And it was only reminded because I was looking at the B-roll on the Flickr page. But I know you guys just had an engineering drone fly through the GBT. I was wondering if you are going to be putting a lot of that fly through stuff on. I saw one of them on there.
That's a really good question. Some of the engineering drone footage is not as, they're doing it for engineering purposes. They're not necessarily doing it for media purposes. So it's a little shaky or it's not as picturesque as you might see. But I will take a look at what's up there and what's not up there and update it. We have actually, for the past year, been working on a new digital asset management system, and we're getting ready to, hopefully by 2026, put it online. It will eventually end up replacing Flickr, and it will have not just Green Bank assets, but assets for all of the NRAO instruments. It's huge. It's almost going to be overwhelming in the amount of data or assets that it will have. So I know for sure they're on that one, but that doesn't help you right now because you can't get to it. I will say, if you ever think you have seen something in the past that you can't find on Flickr, just shoot me an email directly, and somewhere in my brain I probably know where it's hidden, and we can get you that too. So, and I'm
Cool.
also going to drop the link to the news form that I showed you, so you guys can bookmark that and save it somewhere as well. So.
Awesome. I'll also mention that we recently were able to go over and do a bunch of 360 video over the GBT and stuff. So from WView. So I need to send that. I need to remember to send that over to you, Jill, once I
You
get it.
do. That's why when I saw your name in the call, I was like, I know Joe.
Yeah, I need to get that finished processing and then send that over to you.
Thank you so much. It'll be awesome when you do that.
Hello, I have one question. So is the press release for the upcoming paper, or can this for the published papers? And what's
Upcoming
the
papers. Yeah, we like to do a press release before a paper publishes. We don't necessarily do them posthumously, like after they're out, unless it was some sleeper hit that we didn't know about. If every now and then, you might have some finding that gets discovered by a journalist randomly because they read journal articles and they'll pick it up and run with it. Then we might do one, but in general, we only create them before they publish because that news will be fresh. No one's seen it before.
and so usually the timeline for publication could be much longer. So between like submission and publication, and there could be multiple rounds of referee report. Like how do you do like those like timing? Do you like have the press release when it's like published, accepted, or?
Well, yeah, you should contact us as soon as you submit. And we know that there's going to be iterations, but the way that we tell your story is so general, and the edits that you have to make are so they're so technically complex. Those have never impacted the basic story that we're telling. So we want as much lead time as possible. As soon as you're getting ready to submit, you should reach out and say you want to do a press release. We'll see if the story fits and all that stuff that I said, and then we'll work together. The referee process that you go through is not going to impact the story that we're telling in the press release. Our press release isn't that granular. They're usually one page or less, and we really just summarize the work that you've done. We don't get highly technical.
Thank you.
Good question.
Anything else for Jill? All right. If not, thank you so much. And you know where to contact her. I'll put her email here in the chat as well.
Cool. Have a great rest of your workshop, you all. And I'll probably see some of you at AAS if you're there. Feel free to come up and say, hey, since obviously I can't see all your faces, I don't mind. I have people do that all the time, and I think it's always fun to meet people in the wild in 3D. So thanks.
Thanks, Jill. Now, before we break, I do just want to show one thing because we've reached the end of the talks. Mustang will have another data reduction type talk at the end of their session today. But for everyone else, we've reached the end of the formal presentations, and we just have observing prep this afternoon and then data reduction tomorrow. You will have probably seen that there's this section for project recaps, and this is the time for you to just very informally tell us what your group looked at. So if you click on this link here, this drive link, it'll take you into a place where every group has a different Google slide that you can add a couple pictures to, whatever you want, for wins or things that were problems that you encountered throughout your either preparation, observation, or data reduction. And the point of this isn't to have any kind of formal presentation. You'll see there's only 5 minutes per group that we've allocated for this, but just tell us what you did. And this is a nice fun time for us to have a recap of the workshop. So you can find that again on the schedule with this drive link. So we will go away for the next almost an hour and then come back at 1:30 Eastern for the final group observing preparation session. So we'll see you.